Harper Lane lifted the champagne flute to her lips, watching the golden bubbles dance in the soft light of their Brooklyn brownstone's living room. Across the room, Ethan Welzer's soon-to-be ex-husband was telling their friend Marcus about his new startup venture, gesturing with the same animated confidence that had once made her fall in love with him. The irony wasn't lost on her that they were throwing the most civilized divorce party Manhattan had ever seen. To Harper and Ethan, called out their mutual friend Sarah, raising her glass high, for showing us all how to love each other enough to let go. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Harper smiled, the expression feeling like a well-rehearsed performance after months of practice. She caught Ethan's eye across the room, and he winked at her the same playful gesture he'd made on their wedding day 7 years ago. Everything about tonight felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold in slow motion. "You two are relationship goals, even in divorce," laughed their neighbor Tom, slapping Ethan on the back. "I mean, who throws a party to celebrate the end of their marriage? It's genius." Harper's sister Lily appeared at her elbow, champagne flute in hand, and that familiar sparkle in her green eyes. At 28, Lily still had that effortless beauty that turned heads wherever she went, the kind that had made Harper feel perpetually overlooked during their teenage years. Tonight, she looked radiant in a silk emerald dress that complemented her auburn hair perfectly. "I'm so proud of you, Harper," Lily said, squeezing her sister's arm. "This is exactly what you needed. A fresh start, no drama, just grace." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Ethan's lucky you're being so mature about everything." Harper studied her sister's face, noting the slight flush in her cheeks that came from more than just champagne. "We both decided this was for the best. No point in making it ugly when we can make it beautiful instead." The truth was more complicated. Of course, the truth was that Harper had been emotionally numb for months, going through the motions of a marriage that had slowly died after her miscarriage 2 years ago. She'd thrown herself into work at the marketing firm, climbing from senior associate to executive director, while Ethan built his tech company. From their home office, they'd become roommates who occasionally had sex and split the mortgage. Their conversations reduced to logistics and pleasantries. When Ethan had suggested divorce 6 months ago during one of their increasingly rare dinner conversations, Harper had felt something close to relief. They'd approached it like a business transaction mediation instead of lawyers. Joint decisions about asset division, even keeping the same friend group. Their therapist had called it conscious uncoupling, and Harper had embraced the concept. "Like a life raft, the papers are officially filed," Ethan announced to the room, producing a manila envelope from his jacket pocket. "As of tomorrow, we'll be officially unmarried." More cheers erupted. Someone started the music louder, and couples began dancing in the living room they'd once shared. Harper watched Lily pull Marcus onto the makeshift dance floor, her laughter ringing out above the music. There was something magnetic about her sister. There always had been. Men gravitated toward Lily like moths to flame, while Harper had always been the responsible one, the planner, the sister who had her life together. As the night wore on, Harper found herself playing the perfect hostess, refilling glasses and making sure everyone felt included. She caught fragments of conversations, friends marveling at their maturity, speculation about who would keep the house they'd decided to sell it, questions about whether they'd remain friends. Through it all, she maintained her composure, that practiced smile never wavering. Near midnight, as the last guests filtered out into the Brooklyn night, Harper stood in her kitchen surveying the aftermath. Empty bottles lined the counter, lipstick-stained glasses filled the sink, and the air still hummed with the energy of celebration. Ethan appeared beside her, loosening his tie. "I think that went well," he said, beginning to stack plates. "Better than well, actually. I think we proved something tonight." "What's that?" Harper asked, loading champagne flutes into the dishwasher with mechanical precision. "That two people can love each other enough to admit when they're not right for each other anymore." His voice carried a note of something relief, sadness. Harper couldn't tell anymore. She'd lost the ability to read him somewhere along the way. Lily reappeared from the bathroom, having changed from her dress into jeans and a sweater. "I should head back to my apartment," she said, gathering her purse and jacket. "Thank you both for letting me be part of tonight. It was special. She hugged Ethan first, and Harper noticed the way her sister's hands lingered on his shoulders for just a moment too long. Then Lily turned to Harper, pulling her into a tight embrace that smelled like expensive perfume and champagne. "I love you, Harper. You know that, right? No matter what happens, you're my sister and I love you." There was something urgent in Lily's voice, almost desperate. Harper pulled back to study her sister's face, but Lily was already moving toward the door, calling good night over her shoulder. After she left, Harper and Ethan finished cleaning in comfortable silence. It struck her that this might be one of the last times they'd share domestic tasks, one of the final moments of their married routine. When they finished, they stood awkwardly in the living room, unsure how to end the evening. "I guess this is it," Ethan said finally. "The official end of us." Harper nodded, feeling strangely empty. "I suppose it is." He kissed her cheek, a brotherly peck that held no heat, no longing, just the ghost of what they'd once been. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Harper. You deserve to be happy." As she watched him gather his jacket and keys, Harper wondered if this was what healing was supposed to feel like, this strange combination of relief and loss, this sense of closing a door while standing in an empty room. She'd spent months preparing for this moment, and now that it was here, she felt nothing but a vast, echoing quiet. After Ethan left, Harper poured herself one final glass of champagne and sat in her living room, surrounded by the detritus of their divorce party. Tomorrow, she would begin the process of packing up 7 years of shared life. Tomorrow, she would start over. Tonight, she would toast to endings that felt like beginnings, and try to convince herself that numbness was just another word for peace. 2 weeks later, Harper stood in the master bedroom, surrounded by boxes and packing tape, methodically dismantling the life she'd built with Ethan. The brownstone felt different now, lighter somehow, as though the weight of failed expectations had been lifted from its walls. She'd taken a leave of absence from the marketing firm to handle the logistics of unwinding a marriage, and the days had fallen into a therapeutic rhythm of sorting, packing, and letting go. The realtor would be showing the house next week, which meant everything had to be cleared out. Harper had surprised herself with how easily she could categorize their shared possessions: his, hers, and donate. 7 years of marriage reduced to neat piles and labeled boxes. She was pulling books from the built-in shelves when her fingers brushed against something tucked behind a row of travel guides, her old leather-bound journal from college. Harper smiled, remembering how religiously she'd written in it during her early 20s, documenting everything from heartbreaks to career anxieties with the intensity of someone who believed every emotion was worth preserving. She hadn't seen the journal in years. It must have gotten pushed back there during one of their moves within the house, forgotten behind Ethan's collection of entrepreneurship books and her own marketing texts. Harper settled onto the hardwood floor, cross-legged like a child, and opened the worn leather cover. The early entries were exactly as she remembered, pages of cramped handwriting, detailing her junior year abroad in Italy, her senior thesis stress, her early days at the marketing firm. She flipped through months of entries, smiling at her younger self's dramatic interpretations of everyday events. There was the entry about meeting Ethan at a mutual friend's party, pages of analysis about whether he was interested, the breathless account of their first kiss. But as she neared the end of the journal, Harper's smile faded. The handwriting changed, still feminine, still flowing, but different from her own neat script. These letters were looser, more artistic, with the distinctive way of forming G's and Y's that Harper recognized immediately. Lily's handwriting, Harper's breath caught as she read the date on the first entry in her sister's hand, March 15th. 3 years ago. The entry was short, almost tentative. "I know I shouldn't be writing in Harper's journal, but I found it in the guest room and I needed somewhere to put these thoughts. I can't tell anyone what happened tonight. I can't tell anyone that when Harper was upstairs crying about the miscarriage, Ethan and I talked for hours on the couch. I can't tell anyone that he kissed me. God help me, I kissed him back." Harper's hands began to shake. She flipped to the next entry, dated a week later. "It's happening again. Harper's been working late every night, burying herself in that Johnson and Associates campaign, and Ethan seems so lonely. We didn't plan it, But when he offered to drive me home from dinner at their place, we ended up parked outside my apartment for 2 hours just talking. He says Harper has been distant since the miscarriage, that she won't let him touch her, won't even look at him sometimes. I know I should tell him to go to counseling with her, to fight for their marriage. Instead, I invited him up for coffee. The journal slipped from Harper's hands, pages fluttering as it hit the floor. She stared at the fallen book as though it might explode, her mind racing to process what she'd just read. 3 years ago, right after her miscarriage, when she'd been drowning in grief and throwing herself into work to avoid dealing with the loss, when Lily had been staying in their guest room between apartments, supposedly supporting Harper through the worst period of her life. With trembling fingers, Harper picked up the journal and continued reading. Entry after entry detailed a secret affair that had lasted nearly 2 years. Lily wrote about stolen afternoons when Harper was at work, about text messages deleted immediately after sending, about the guilt that gnawed at her even as she couldn't stop herself from falling deeper into the deception. June 2nd, Ethan says he loves me. Not like he loves Harper. He says that's duty now, obligation. He says what we have is real, raw, alive. I know it's wrong, but when he touches me, I feel like I'm the only woman in the world. Harper used to light up like that around him, but I haven't seen her really smile in months. Is it worse to stay in a dead marriage or to love someone who makes you feel alive? Harper's vision blurred with tears she hadn't expected. She'd known her marriage was dying, had felt the distance growing between her and Ethan, but she'd attributed it to grief, to the natural ebb and flow of long-term relationships. She'd never suspected betrayal, especially not from the two people she trusted most in the world. The entries continued through summer and fall, documenting secret meetings and close calls. Lily wrote about hiding in the closet when Harper came home early, about covering for Ethan when he was late to dinner, about the elaborate web of lies they'd constructed to protect their affair. But what struck Harper most was her sister's genuine anguish. This wasn't casual infidelity. Lily was tormented by what she was doing, even as she seemed unable to stop. November 10th. I have to end this. Harper invited me to Thanksgiving, and I watched her set the table for 3, arranging the flowers she bought specially because she knows I love white roses. She's been so kind to me, so generous, letting me stay here while I figure out my life. She has no idea that the life I'm figuring out includes sleeping with her husband. I am the worst sister who ever lived. But the entries didn't stop there. They continued through winter and into the following spring, the affair apparently continuing despite Lily's repeated resolutions to end it. Harper read about hotel rooms and business trips, about Ethan missing Harper's work events because he was with Lily, about the gradual erosion of her marriage while she remained completely oblivious. The final entry was dated 8 months ago. It's over. Ethan says he's going to ask Harper for a divorce, but not because of me. He says their marriage has been dead for 2 years, that they're both just going through the motions. He's probably right. I've watched them together, and it's like watching strangers who happen to share a house. But I can't be the reason he leaves her. I can't live with knowing I destroyed my sister's marriage, even if it was already broken. I'm going to tell him we can't see each other anymore. I'm going to try to rebuild my relationship with Harper, to be the sister she deserves. Maybe someday I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror again. Harper closed the journal and sat in the silence of her bedroom, processing what she'd just learned. Her marriage hadn't just died, it had been murdered, slowly and methodically, by the two people she'd trusted most. While she'd been grieving the loss of their child and trying to hold herself together, they'd been building a life behind her back. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself, it was the elaborate performance that had followed. The months of marriage counseling where Ethan had sat beside her, nodding sympathetically as the therapist talked about communication and reconnection. The family dinners where Lily had played the supportive sister, asking about Harper's work and offering advice about relationships. The divorce party where they'd all pretended this was a mutual, mature decision between two people who'd simply grown apart. Harper's phone buzzed with a text from Lily. How's the packing going? Need help with anything? Love you, sis. She stared at the message for a long moment, then set the phone aside without responding, through the bedroom window. Brooklyn stretched out before her, a city full of people living their own complicated lives, harboring their own secrets, performing their own versions of normalcy. Harper had spent 2 weeks congratulating herself on handling her divorce with such grace and maturity. Now she realized she'd been living in a carefully constructed lie, applauding herself for accepting a betrayal she'd never even known existed. She picked up the journal again, this time not to read but to study it as evidence. This leather-bound book held the real story of her marriages, and not the civilized narrative of two people growing apart, but the messy truth of deception and betrayal that had been hidden from her for years. For the first time since finding the journal, Harper felt something other than shock. A slow burn was building in her chest, a mixture of rage and humiliation that made her hands clench into fists. She'd been played for a fool by the two people who were supposed to love her most, and they'd done it so skillfully that she'd actually thank them for their honesty. The old Harper would have confronted them immediately, tears streaming, demanding explanations and apologies. But sitting on her bedroom floor, surrounded by the ruins of her marriage, Harper felt herself changing into someone harder, someone more calculating. She'd been performing strength for months while feeling broken inside. Maybe it was time to discover what real strength actually looked like. Harper returned to work the following Monday with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. Her colleagues at Morrison and Associates welcomed her back with the kind of careful enthusiasm reserved for someone who'd recently experienced a major life change, warm but not intrusive, supportive but not overwhelming. She threw herself into the Hartwell Industries campaign with a focus that impressed even her demanding boss, Margaret Chen. But beneath the surface of professional competence, Harper was conducting a different kind of campaign entirely. She'd spent the weekend in a strange state of calm calculation, the initial shock of discovering the affair settling into something more sustainable, determination. She'd always been methodical in her approach to problems. It's what made her excellent at marketing strategy, and she decided to apply the same analytical skills to understanding the full scope of the betrayal she'd uncovered. The first step was reconnaissance. Harper needed to understand exactly when and how the affair had played out, not just Lily's emotional interpretation of events. She needed facts, patterns, proof that couldn't be explained away or minimized. During her lunch break, Harper walked to the Verizon store and requested detailed phone records for both her and Ethan's lines for the past 3 years. The customer service representative, a kind middle-aged woman named Rosa, initially resisted providing such extensive records. "That's a lot of data, honey. Are you sure you need all of that? Most people just need the last few months for tax purposes or whatever." Harper smiled, the same polished smile she used in client presentations. "I'm going through a divorce, and my lawyer needs comprehensive records for asset division. My ex-husband claims he wasn't using the phone for business purposes, but his usage patterns will tell the real story. It wasn't entirely a lie. Harper was getting divorced, and the records would certainly tell a story, just not the one she'd implied." Rose's expression softened with understanding. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Men always try to hide their business expenses during divorce proceedings. Let me get you everything you need." An hour later, Harper sat in her car in the Verizon parking lot, spreading 3 years' worth of phone records across her passenger seat. She'd always been good with data analysis. It was a core part of her job, and the patterns emerged quickly. Starting in March of 3 years ago, right around the time of Lily's first journal entry, there was a dramatic increase in text messages between Ethan's phone and a number Harper didn't immediately recognize. But when she cross-referenced it with her own phone contacts, she found it listed under Lily, new number. The frequency was staggering. During the height of the affair, according to the records, Ethan and Lily had exchanged over 100 text messages some days. The timing was particularly damning: clusters of messages during Harper's work hours, heavy activity on evenings when Harper had been working late or traveling for business. Harper traced the patterns with her finger, watching her marriage dissolve in real time through cellular data. There were the dates when she'd been in Chicago for the Morrison Industries pitch, 37 messages between Ethan and Lily on the first day alone. The weekend she'd gone to a marketing conference in Boston, their message frequency had Most damning were the phone calls, long conversations that lasted hours, often late at night when Harper was asleep or early in the morning before she woke up. The records showed a level of emotional intimacy that went far beyond physical affair. This had been a full relationship, a shadow marriage conducted in the margins of her real one. But what struck Harper most was how the communication patterns had changed over time. The frantic frequency of the early affair period gradually settled into something more sustainable, more routine. By the second year, their texting had developed a rhythm that suggested established patterns. Inside jokes, the kind of shorthand that develops between people who talk constantly. Harper photographed every page of the records with her phone, creating a digital archive of the evidence. Then she drove to FedEx and had copies made, storing the originals in a safety deposit box she opened that afternoon at Chase Bank. She wasn't sure yet what she planned to do with this information, but she'd learned enough in corporate marketing to know that documentation was power. That evening, Harper met her friend Sarah for dinner at their usual spot, a trendy Mediterranean place in Park Slope. Sarah had been asking since the divorce party whether Harper was really as okay as she seemed, and tonight Harper decided to test her acting skills. "I've been thinking about the past few years," Harper said, twirling pasta round her fork with studied casualness, trying to understand how Ethan and I got to the point where divorce felt like the right choice. Sarah nodded sympathetically. "It's natural to want to make sense of it all. You guys seemed so solid for so long. That's what I keep thinking about. When did we stop being solid? I can pinpoint some of the obvious moments, the miscarriage, definitely. But I wonder if there were signs I missed, things happening that I was too busy or too naive to notice. What kind of things?" Harper took a sip of wine, considering her words carefully. "Well, like how often Lily was around during that period. She was staying with us on and off for almost 2 years, and I was so focused on work and dealing with my own grief that I barely paid attention to what was happening in my own house. Lily's always been close to both of you," Sarah said. "I remember thinking it was sweet how she'd include Ethan in girls' nights when you were working late. Not every sister would be so thoughtful about their brother-in-law." Harper's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Girls' nights? Oh, when you'd be stuck at the office and Lily would text me to come over for wine and movies. Ethan would usually join us for a bit before disappearing into his office. Lily always said she didn't want him to feel left out in his own house." The pasta suddenly tasted like cardboard in Harper's mouth. "How often did this happen?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Maybe once a week for a while there. Lily was going through that rough patch with her job, and you were swamped with that pharmaceutical account. We all figured it was better than her sitting alone in that tiny studio apartment she was subletting." Harper forced herself to keep eating, to maintain the casual tone of the conversation. But inside, she was recalculating everything. Those girls' nights, Sarah remembered, weren't just Lily and her friends hanging out. While Harper worked late, they were cover for Lily and Ethan to spend time together, without raising suspicion. And Harper's closest friend had unknowingly provided alibis for her husband and sister's affair. "You're right," Harper said finally. "Lily was being thoughtful. I should probably thank her for taking care of Ethan when I was so distracted." After dinner, Harper walked alone through Prospect Park, processing what she'd learned. The affair hadn't just been secret meetings and stolen moments, it had been a carefully orchestrated deception that involved manipulating their entire social circle. Lily had used Harper's friends as unwitting accomplices, creating opportunities to be with Ethan while maintaining the facade of supportive sister. Harper's phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Hey, found some of your books mixed in with mine. Should I drop them by your office tomorrow?" She stared at the message for a long moment, remembering how she'd felt grateful for his considerate tone just 2 weeks ago. Now she wondered if every interaction they'd had over the past 3 years had been performance, if every kindness had been motivated by guilt rather than genuine care. "That would be great. Thanks," she texted back, matching his casual tone. A few minutes later, another text appeared. This one from Lily. "Coffee tomorrow. I feel like we haven't talked much since the divorce party. Want to make sure you're doing okay." Harper almost laughed at the irony. Her sister was worried about her emotional well-being after orchestrating the destruction of her marriage. The audacity was breathtaking. Sounds good. Bluestone Lane at 10. Perfect. Love you. Harper pocketed her phone and continued walking through the park, past couples holding hands and families with young children. A month ago, she'd felt envious of their apparent happiness, wondering what secrets she and Ethan had failed to discover that might have saved their marriage. Now she wondered what secrets those happy-looking couples might be hiding from each other. Tomorrow, she would sit across from her sister and listen to Lily express concern for her well-being. She would smile and accept comfort from the person who had betrayed her most deeply, and she would continue gathering information, building a complete picture of the deception that had shaped the last 3 years of her life. Harper had always prided herself on being honest, on approaching relationships with transparency and trust, but she was beginning to understand that sometimes the people who loved you most were the ones most capable of destroying you, and they could do it with such skill that you'd actually thank them for it. The old Harper would have confronted this betrayal with tears and accusations, demanding immediate explanations and emotional catharsis. But the woman walking through Prospect Park that night was discovering something new about herself. She could be patient, she could be strategic, and she could be absolutely ruthless when the situation called for it. The investigation was just beginning. The next morning's coffee meeting with Lily felt like performing in a play, where only Harper knew the real script. They sat at their usual corner table at Bluestone Lane, the trendy cafe bustling with the typical Brooklyn crowd of remote workers and yoga mat-carrying women meeting friends between classes. Harper had arrived early and chosen a seat. That put her back to the wall, a small psychological advantage that allowed her to observe Lily's body language without distraction. Lily looked radiant, as she always did. Her auburn hair caught the morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and her skin had that healthy glow that seemed to come naturally to women who didn't carry the weight of corporate stress. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that Harper recognized as expensive, far beyond what Lily should have been able to afford on her freelance graphic design income. "You look amazing," Lily said, settling into her chair with a warm smile. "Seriously, Harper, divorce suits you. You're glowing." Harper smiled back, noting the slight tension around Lily's eyes that suggested she wasn't as comfortable as she was pretending to be. "Thank you. I feel lighter, I guess. Like I can finally breathe again. I'm so proud of how you handled everything." The divorce party was genius, showing everyone that endings don't have to be ugly. "You and Ethan really demonstrated what mature love looks like." The phrase hit Harper like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. Mature love. Is that what Lily called years of systematically destroying Harper's marriage while playing the role of supportive sister? "It wasn't always easy," Harper said carefully. "There were moments over the past few years when I wondered if we were giving up too quickly, if there were things we weren't seeing or addressing properly." Lily's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "What do you mean, Bo? You know how it is. When a marriage is falling apart, you start questioning everything. Was there something I missed? Were there signs of, I don't know, other issues that I was too blind to see?" "What kind of other issues?" Lily's voice had developed a slight edge, though she was clearly trying to keep it light. Harper shrugged, maintaining her casual tone. "Infidelity, I suppose. It's so common during rough patches. I used to wonder if Ethan was getting his needs met elsewhere when I was so emotionally unavailable after the miscarriage." The color drained from Lily's face so quickly that Harper almost felt sorry for her. "Almost, Harper. Why would you even think that? Ethan's not the type to. I mean, he loved you. He would never." "Oh, I don't really think he did," Harper said, quickly, reaching across the table to squeeze Lily's hand. "I'm just saying the thoughts cross your mind, you know, when you're trying to understand how something that felt so solid just disintegrated." Lily's hand was trembling slightly under Harper's touch. "Right? Of course, it's natural to wonder." Harper studied her sister's face, noting the way Lily couldn't quite meet her eyes. The guilt was written all over her features, the slight downturn of her mouth, the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept fidgeting with her engagement ring. "Speaking of relationships," Harper said, changing the subject with the practiced ease of someone steering a business meeting, How are things with David? The wedding planning must be getting intense. Relief flooded Lily's features as they moved to safer ground. It's been crazy, but good crazy. David's been so patient with all my neurotic planning tendencies. We're thinking of doing the ceremony in the Hamptons. His family has a house out there. That would be perfect for a small, intimate wedding. That sounds lovely. When were you thinking? Early fall. Probably September. Nothing huge, maybe 50 people max. Just family and close friends. Lily paused, looking suddenly uncertain. I hope things won't be weird with you and Ethan both being there. I mean, if you're comfortable with it, I'd love for you both to be part of the day. Harper had to admire her sister's audacity. The woman who had spent 2 years sleeping with Harper's husband was now worried about the awkwardness of having them both at her wedding. I think we're past the point where being in the same room would be uncomfortable, Harper said. We're adults. We can handle a few hours of polite social interaction for your special day. That's such a relief. You know how much your opinion means to me, Harper. Your approval. It matters. The word approval hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that only Harper understood. She wondered if Lily was thinking about all the times she'd sought Harper's approval, while simultaneously betraying her. All the family dinners where she'd played the devoted sister while carrying on an affair with Harper's husband. Tell me about David, Harper said. How did you know he was the one? Lily's face lit up with genuine happiness. He's just steady, you know, reliable. After all the drama with guys who couldn't commit or were emotionally unavailable, David feels like coming home. He sees me, really sees me, and loves me anyway. That's beautiful and rare. Harper paused, as if struck by a thought. It's funny how we can be looking for love in all the wrong places and then suddenly find it where we least expect it. What do you mean? Oh, just that sometimes we think we want excitement and passion, but what we actually need is someone who shows up consistently, someone who doesn't make us question where we stand. Harper met Lily's eyes directly. Someone who doesn't keep secrets. Lily's smile faltered slightly. Yes, exactly. Honesty is everything in a relationship. Absolutely. I think that's part of what went wrong with Ethan and me. We stopped being completely honest with each other. We started keeping things to ourselves, creating distance even when we were in the same room. What kind of things? Harper shrugged. Small stuff that becomes big stuff, you know? Conversations we weren't having, feelings we weren't sharing, suspicions we weren't voicing. I think by the end, we were basically strangers living in the same house. She watched Lily process this information, could practically see the wheels turning as her sister wondered how much Harper might have suspected, how much she might still suspect. I wish I had been more present during that time, Lily said finally. I was staying with you guys so much, but I was dealing with my own stuff, the job search, the apartment hunting, all that quarter-life crisis nonsense. I feel like I wasn't the support system you needed. It was a masterful deflection. Harper had to admit, Lily was reframing her presence in their home during the affair as self-absorbed rather than predatory, positioning herself as an inadequate sister rather than a betraying one. You were dealing with a lot, Harper agreed, and honestly, I was probably not the most available sister during that period either. I was so wrapped up in work and my own emotional stuff that I wasn't really paying attention to what anyone else needed. You were grieving, Harper. After the miscarriage, you needed space to heal. We all understood that. The mention of the miscarriage, the event that had started it all, the moment of Harper's greatest vulnerability that had somehow become the opportunity for Lily. And Ethan's betrayal sent a spike of rage through Harper's chest, but she kept her voice level, her expression sympathetic. I think I used work as an escape for too long. I threw myself into campaigns and client meetings instead of dealing with what was happening at home. By the time I realized how disconnected Ethan and I had become, it felt too late to bridge the gap. You did the best you could with an impossible situation. Losing a baby, I can't even imagine. Harper studied her sister's face, looking for any crack in the facade, any hint of the guilt and shame that must be eating at her. But Lily had always been good at performance, good at being whoever the situation required her to be. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for being there during that time. Even if we were both dealing with our own stuff, It meant a lot to a family close by. They finished their coffee, making small talk about work and mutual friends. But Harper's mind was racing with everything she'd observed and learned. Lily was clearly on edge, hyper-aware of Harper's questions and comments in a way that suggested ongoing guilt and paranoia. But she was also committed to maintaining the fiction, to playing the role of supportive sister right up until the end. As they hugged goodbye on the sidewalk outside the cafe, Harper felt the full weight of her sister's deception. For 3 years, every interaction they'd had was built on lies. Every family dinner, every heart-to-heart conversation, every moment of sisterly bonding had been contaminated by Lily's secret relationship with Ethan. "I love you, Harper," Lily said, holding her tight. "You know that, right?" "I love you too," Harper replied, meaning it despite everything. That was perhaps the cruelest part of the betrayal. She did still love her sister. Even knowing what she'd done, love didn't just disappear when trust was broken. It lingered, complicated and painful, making everything harder. Walking back to her office, Harper felt the familiar burn of determination in her chest. She'd learned what she needed to know from this conversation. Lily was nervous, but committed to the lie, and she had no idea that Harper had discovered the truth. The balance of power was still entirely in Harper's favor, but Harper also knew that she couldn't sustain this level of performance indefinitely. The careful questions, the studied casual tone, the constant monitoring of her own reactions, it was exhausting. Soon, she would have to decide what to do with everything she'd learned. The old Harper would have confronted them immediately, demanding explanations and apologies in a tearful scene that would have given them the opportunity to minimize, justify, and control the narrative. But this Harper, the one who had spent weeks methodically gathering evidence and analyzing patterns, was beginning to understand that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal wasn't immediate emotional release, but strategic patience. She had one more piece of information to gather before she decided how to proceed. That evening, Harper drove to Ethan's new apartment in Williamsburg, ostensibly to pick up the books he'd mentioned, but her real goal was to observe him in his new environment, to see if there were any signs that his relationship with Lily was continuing post-divorce. Ethan's apartment was a sleek one-bedroom in a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. It was aggressively masculine in a way that felt performative, as if he was trying to prove his independence from their shared domestic aesthetic. He offered her wine, which she accepted, and they sat in his living room, making the kind of careful conversation divorced couples made when they were still figuring out how to interact. "How's work?" she asked, noting that there were no photos displayed anywhere, no personal touches that might reveal current relationships. "Busy. The new app is launching next month, so it's all hands on deck." He paused, studying her face. "How are you doing, really? I know the divorce party was unconventional, but I hope it didn't feel like we were minimizing what we had." Harper almost laughed at the irony. Here was Ethan, worried about minimizing their marriage, when he'd spent 2 years actively destroying it behind her back. "I think it was the right approach for us," she said. "We both got what we needed, closure without drama." "I'm glad you feel that way. I was worried you might be putting on a brave face for everyone else's benefit." He leaned forward, slightly, his expression earnest. "Harper, I want you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but staying would have been worse for both of us." The sincerity in his voice was almost convincing. If Harper hadn't read Lily's journal entries, hadn't seen the phone records, she might have believed that this was simply a man who had the courage to end a marriage that wasn't working. Instead, she saw it for what it was, a carefully constructed narrative designed to absolve him of guilt, while casting himself as the noble party who'd made the difficult but necessary choice. "I appreciate you saying that," Harper replied, "and I want you to know that I don't blame you for anything. We both played a part in what went wrong." Ethan's relief was visible. "That means everything to me. I was so afraid you'd end up hating me." As Harper drove home that night, she reflected on how skilled both Ethan and Lily had become at managing her emotions, at steering conversations away from dangerous territory and toward narratives that painted them in sympathetic light. They'd had 3 years to perfect these techniques, 3 years of practice at lying to her face while expressing concern for her well-being. But Harper had seen enough. She had the journal entries, the phone records, the testimony of unwitting friends, and now the confirmation of ongoing deception from both parties. She had built an airtight case that revealed not just the affair itself, but the elaborate system of lies and manipulation that had surrounded it. The question now was what to do with this information. Harper could confront them privately, demanding explanations and apologies that would ultimately change nothing. She could expose them publicly, destroying their reputations and relationships in a spectacular burn that would satisfy her anger, but leave her feeling empty afterward. Or she could find a third option, something that would hold them accountable, while preserving her own dignity and sanity. Sitting in her car outside her brownstone, Harper made a decision that surprised even herself. She would wait, not indefinitely, but long enough to see how far they would take their deception. Lily's wedding was for months away, and Harper was curious to see if her sister would actually go through with inviting both her and Ethan to celebrate her marriage to David while keeping the secret of her affair. There was something poetic about the idea of using Lily's wedding as the setting for the truth to finally come out. After all, it was fitting that an event celebrating love and commitment should be the place where years of betrayal were finally exposed. Harper smiled as she walked up the steps to her front door. For the first time since discovering the journal, she felt something approaching peace. She had a plan, she had evidence, and she had time. Most importantly, she had reclaimed control of a narrative that had been stolen from her. The performance could continue a little longer, but Harper knew exactly how she wanted the final act to play out. Part 5. The wedding gift. For months later, Harper stood in the bridal suite of the Hamptons estate, where Lily was getting married, watching her sister apply the final touches of lipstick in an antique mirror. The September afternoon was perfect, golden light streaming through tall windows, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of roses from the garden, and 50 guests gathering on the lawn below for what everyone expected to be an intimate, romantic ceremony. Harper had spent those 4 months in an odd state of suspended animation, going through the motions of her new single life while privately preparing for this moment. She'd thrown herself back into work, started dating again a kind banker named Michael who treated her with uncomplicated affection, and played the role of supportive sister, planning Lily's wedding with enthusiasm that wasn't entirely feigned. Because the truth was, Harper did want her sister to be happy, even knowing what she knew, even carrying the weight of betrayal and deception. She still loved Lily in that complicated way that family love persists despite everything, which made what she was about to do both necessary and heartbreaking. "You look beautiful," Harper said, and meant it. Lily was radiant in her vintage lace dress, her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo that showcased the pearl earrings their grandmother had worn at her own wedding. She looked like the picture of innocent bridal joy, which made the contrast with the truth even more stark. "I can't believe this is actually happening," Lily said, turning from the mirror with tears in her eyes. "David, the wedding, all of it. A year ago I thought I'd never find someone who could love me completely, who could accept all my mistakes and flaws." The irony wasn't lost on Harper. David was indeed accepting all of Lily's flaws, he just didn't know what they were. "Everyone deserves that kind of love," Harper said carefully. "Someone who sees you clearly and chooses you anyway." Lily crossed the room and pulled Harper into a tight hug. "Thank you for being here today, for being so supportive through everything. I know this past year has been hard for you with the divorce and starting over, but you've never once made me feel like my happiness was a burden." Harper held her sister close, breathing in her familiar perfume and feeling the full weight of what was about to happen. "Family is family, Lily, no matter what." There was a soft knock on the door, and David appeared in his navy suit, looking nervous and excited. He'd asked Harper's permission to see Lily before the ceremony, a sweet tradition that spoke to his genuine love for her sister. "Can I steal my bride for a moment?" he asked with a grin that made Harper's chest ache. David was a good man who deserved better than to be marrying someone capable of such elaborate deception. But Harper had made peace with the fact that she couldn't protect everyone from the consequences of Lily's choices. Harper stepped out onto the estate's wraparound porch, giving the couple a moment of privacy. Below her, guests were taking their seats in white wooden chairs arranged on the manicured lawn. She spotted Ethan near the back, looking handsome in his charcoal suit and talking with mutual friends who still thought of him as Harper's amicable ex-husband. Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Sarah. "You're handling this so well. Not sure I could watch my ex at my sister's wedding with such grace." Harper almost laughed. If only Sarah knew what real grace under pressure looked like. At exactly 4 o'clock, Harper took her place as maid of honor and watched Lily walk down the rose-petal-strewn aisle toward David and their future together. The ceremony was beautiful and intimate, with personal vows that brought tears to most of the guests' eyes. Lily spoke about finding love when she least expected it, about learning to trust someone completely, about building a life based on honesty and mutual respect. Harper maintained her composed smile throughout, but inside she was marveling at her sister's ability to speak those words without a trace of irony or shame. It was a masterclass in compartmentalization, in the human capacity for self-deception. During the cocktail hour, Harper mingled with guests and accepted compliments on how well she was handling her life changes. Everyone seemed to view her as an inspiration, the woman who'd navigated divorce with grace and was now celebrating her sister's happiness without a trace of bitterness. If they only knew. As the sun began to set and guests moved toward the reception tent, Harper found herself standing alone for a moment on the estate's dock, looking out over the water. This was at the moment she'd been building toward for months. In her purse was a wedding gift she'd wrapped with special care, a leather-bound journal, identical to the one she'd found in her old brownstone. Inside the journal, Harper had carefully recreated every entry Lily had written about the affair, copied in her own handwriting, but she'd added something Lily's original entries had lacked: dates, locations, and details that could be verified. Phone records, credit card statements, witness accounts from friends who'd unknowingly provided alibis, a complete timeline of deception that read like a detective's case file. The final entry, written in Harper's neat script, was addressed to David. "I thought you deserved to know the truth about the woman you're marrying. Not because I want to hurt her, but because I believe love should be built on honesty, not performance. What you do with this information is entirely up to you, but at least now you'll be making an informed choice about your future." Harper had debated for weeks about whether to go through with this plan. Part of her wanted to confront Lily and Ethan directly, to have the explosive confrontation that would give her emotional satisfaction. But she'd realized that approach would only give them opportunities to minimize, manipulate, and control the narrative. This way, the truth would speak for itself. She'd also considered the possibility of simply walking away, of letting them live with their secrets and building her own life free from their toxicity. But every time she thought about doing nothing, she remembered David's genuine smile, his obvious love for Lily, and his right to know who he was really marrying. As Harper walked back toward the reception tent, she saw Ethan near the bar, chatting with Lily's college friends. Their eyes met across the crowd, and he raised his glass to her in a small salute, perhaps acknowledging how civilized they were being, how well they were handling this potentially awkward social situation. Harper raised her own glass in return, thinking about how different that gesture would look in retrospect once the truth came out. During dinner, Harper gave a maid of honor speech that had guests dabbing their eyes with napkins. She spoke about watching Lily grow from an impulsive young woman into someone ready for true partnership, about the importance of honesty in relationships, and about how love sometimes required difficult choices. Every word was carefully chosen to carry double meaning that only she fully understood. To Lily and David, Harper concluded, raising her champagne glass, "May your marriage be built on the foundation of truth, and may you always have the courage to choose love over convenience." The tent erupted in cheers and applause. Lily blew Harper a kiss from the head table, tears streaming down her face at her sister's beautiful words. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Harper approached the gift table where wedding presents were displayed. She placed her wrapped journal among the silver picture frames and crystal vases, noting its modest appearance compared to the expensive gifts surrounding it. Sometimes the most powerful things came in simple packages. Harper said her goodbyes to David and Lily, accepting their tearful thanks for making the day so special. She hugged her sister one last time, inhaling her familiar scent and memorizing the feeling of Lily's arms around her. "I love you," Lily whispered. "Thank you for being the best sister anyone could ask for." "I love you too," Harper replied, meaning it completely. "I hope you get everything you deserve." As Harper drove back to the city, she felt a strange combination of sadness and relief. By tomorrow evening, when David opened wedding gifts and found the journal, everything would change. Lily's marriage might not survive the truth, and Harper's relationship with her sister would certainly never be the same. But for the first time in months, Harper felt free from the weight of carrying secrets that weren't hers to keep. She'd given David the same gift she wished someone had given her 3 years ago: the truth about his partner's capacity for deception, delivered in time to make an informed choice about his future. Harper's phone rang as she crossed back into Brooklyn. It was Michael, the banker she'd been dating, calling to see how the wedding had gone. "It was beautiful," Harper said, and realized she meant it. "Complicated, but beautiful. Just like family, I suppose. Are you okay? You sound different." Somehow, Harper smiled, watching the lights of Manhattan appear in her windshield. "I'm good. Actually, I think I'm better than I've been in years. I feel like I can finally move forward." "I'm glad to hear that. Want to grab dinner tomorrow and tell me all about it?" "I'd love that," Harper said, meaning it. For the first time since her divorce, she felt genuinely excited about the future, not because she'd gotten revenge on the people who'd betrayed her, but because she'd finally stopped carrying the weight of their secrets. The truth had a way of setting everyone free, even when it was painful. Especially when it was painful. As Harper pulled into her parking space outside her brownstone, she wondered what David would do when he read the journal. Would he confront Lily immediately, or would he sit with the information for days, trying to decide if love was stronger than betrayal? Would their marriage survive, or would it become another casualty of choices made years before they'd even met? Harper realized she might never know the answers to those questions, and she was surprisingly okay with that uncertainty. She'd done what she felt was right, and now the consequences would unfold without her involvement or control. Walking up the steps to her front door, Harper felt lighter than she had in months. Tomorrow, she would wake up in a world where she no longer had to pretend ignorance about her sister's betrayal or perform forgiveness. She didn't feel. Tomorrow, the truth would be someone else's burden to carry. But tonight, she would sleep peacefully for the first time since finding that journal hidden behind the bookshelf. Not because she'd gotten revenge, but because she'd finally stopped being complicit in her own deception. Sometimes the greatest gift you could give someone wasn't happiness, but honesty. And sometimes the greatest gift you could give yourself was the freedom to stop protecting people from the consequences of their own choices.